right, and now we welcome in some guests with us, as we have been saying all this week, and very fortunate and happy to have some folks in the studio with us today. The other day we had the vote yes for issue 7 folks in, and today we have the vote no folks in today. And with me is Dick Long, Bill Metz, and Jeremy Sufel. Good to have you guys here today.
Morning, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. All right, let's go around the room for anybody that doesn't know who everybody is at this point in time, okay? Because we'll start over here. Bill, you're part of the committee, okay?
I am.
How did you get involved with this whole situation? And give me a little history as to who Bill Metz is.
Well, I've been a resident of Bryan since 1971 and lived most of my life here. In 2020, I brought out the historical facts about how many times this has been brought before the voters and everything else when the council and the administration was looking to try to eliminate BPA. And in that time of 2020, they obviously did not pass it through the third reading, and it didn't go to the voters for a ballot issue. The committee reached out to me and asked for some historical data facts, and that's what we're all about. We're about the facts, not misleading and not trying to make things appear as they're not.
Yeah, excellent. So you're kind of the historian in this bunch of some
Yep.
sorts, huh?
Yep.
Excellent. And Dick Long, because you've been around a long time, you're a historian too. But that becomes somewhat of just the time on the job, because you both a BMU employee and a BPA member at one point.
Correct, sir. I've been with the city of Bryan for 23 years. And then after I retired from the utility, I decided to run for the Board of Public Affairs, got elected, served 12 years up until December of this last year, and decided to take a little break and so I can do some traveling. And
Yeah.
welcome the 3 new board members, and I've been kind of, if you will, mentoring, offering my assistance to kind of bring them up to speed so they can become great board members. And so I'm still involved. I still care. I have a passion for the utility because it was so good to me.
Yeah.
So
How many years as an employee, Dick?
23.
23.
23.
Okay.
We spent 8 years on a street department, and another, I guess it's been 20 years. 20 years with BMU.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 12 years on the board. I was hoping to kind of slide back a little bit and retire and travel and do some more fishing, but my passion is with BMU, and I always had a passion for it. So I'll do whatever I can do to assist to make it a better place.
Yeah. Ever think you'll run again? Will you run for a board's position again, do you think?
I said I would not, but I would love to run again. I miss it immensely. My last 12 years was incredibly great. And I miss it. I miss it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the chance ever comes,
Never say never to nothing.
Never say
anymore.
never.
Yeah, I got you. And Jeremy, you're one of the new faces on the board now.
Yeah, so when the interview process opened up, I mulled it over, thought I had a skill set to offer the board, and I served Internet Help Desk as a contracted employee way back in 2004.
Wow.
So my time with BMU goes back. I've lived in Bryan for 22 years and been involved in that front. So I've been a public servant through county or school district for the better part of 22 years. So.
Your current job right now, what do you do day to day?
I'm the IT manager for the county,
Yeah.
so I provide IT support and manage my team for literally every single county agency.
So we have with us right now a gentleman who is very technical oriented. Okay, I can attest to that. Who understands the modern technologies that we're going to face nowadays, because that is going to be critical, I think, to whether it's the BPA or the council or whoever it might be. We have a gentleman who has been around the utility for most of his life, and also a gentleman here who got involved because he was digging into the history and also is a big supporter of the BPA at this point in time. So those are the three participants that are going to be with me for the next hour, and here we go. How's that? First of all, I guess any statement, would you guys like to make any kind of initial statement early into this whole thing, or do you want to just start going in? Because my whole goal today is to try to go through the issues like we did the other day with the Yes folks, and get the other side of the story if there's another side of the story. Okay, but if there's some opening remarks, I'd like to let you guys make them at this point.
Yeah, I think for us, this has stood for 120 years. The reasons it was put in place back in the early 1900s, I think, still stand today. We have a system that we've proven works. We are in very good standing with the BMU. We're in very good standing financially. So that's kind of our stance. We've got something in place that works, and we want to keep that moving forward.
Yeah. And obviously, in order to keep that moving forward and to keep the BPA, this is one of those issues where you have to vote no.
That's correct.
Oftentimes you have to vote yes on an issue where you want something to happen. Well, in this case, if you want the change to happen and do away with the BPA, you vote yes. If you want the BPA to stay, you vote no. Bill, this is not the first time that we've been around the block with this thing. I mean, this has been a question that has been asked before, and the voters have said no in the past. Except for one time, a long, long time ago, when just me and Dick were still around at that point in time, around the turn of the 19th century. There, yeah.
And actually, it's interesting to find out that when the Bryan Electric Company in 1889 was privatized and was selling electricity for streetlights to the village of Bryan at that time, they had three supervisor managers for the water department and then the electric department. And in 1896, the village council decided they didn't like the rates from the Bryan Electric Company and they didn't like the services they were receiving. So they put before the voters an issue for $15,000 for a bond, and they'd actually purchased the municipality. And in 1901, the voters abolished the utility board because of friction between council and the board. And ironically, in 1906, the Board of Public Affairs was then created, and it's been in place ever since. It's been on the ballot or talked about by at least 3 administrations, and every time it's gone to the voters, depending on whether it was some form of moving the BPA under the council as additional people and eliminating the board, or having appointed boards, or there's even been some discussion about a management director at one point. It's always failed, even in the May primaries.
Yeah, and no doubt about that. The first question I have for you, really, as a group right now, because I thought it was a little bit, I don't know how to put this, because I don't want ill feelings behind either side. But when you have a May ballot, when you bring an issue to a May ballot, the history of that, in my mind, and it's always been that way for 50 years, is that you're trying to put it on a secondary ballot where people are not going to get out to vote, because the turnout generally in the May primary is nowhere near what it will be in November, when you have much bigger elections at that point in time. I kind of felt like that was the very first thing that had things really kind of blaring at me when I first saw this thing. Were you guys similarly thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, even with my experience in the school districts, if you want to get a levy through, you push it through in May. That's when you can motivate your vote base and hope the other side doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and that's where we're at right now. We're in a May situation where an awful lot of folks are just getting their kids through a graduation, maybe, or getting them out of school and looking for vacation. And May has always been a down election, no matter what you're at. And whether that was what they were trying to do or not, I don't know. But we do have a May election coming up with this. That seemed to come up kind of quick, Dick. It
really
didn't.
Quick.
It didn't seem like it was something that had been discussed and thought about for the last year and a half, and it just seemed to pop out of nowhere, didn't it?
It sure did. It just seemed like it was sudden.
Yeah.
And I think without planning, without any thought process on what are you going to do, how are you going to change the setup, and I started asking questions of council and the mayor. What is this going to look like? If this gets passed and it goes under the umbrella of the city, are you going to have a 2-member appointed board? And they said they were going to have an advisory committee. Well, that kind of stumped me. I thought, an advisory committee? How You know, here you got council members making $300 a meeting, and you're going to have an advisory committee that it's not getting paid at all with no experience. How is this going to work? And I've never gotten any answers or anything that makes any sense. So an advisory committee, in my opinion, would never work. It works great for their parks and rec system and not, the other advisory committees they have, but it would not work at all. It would disrupt everything.
Their pushback, I think, to that, Dick, would be that, I think Bowling Green has a group like that. Napoleon has a group like that. Okay, there are a lot of other cities and villages around now that have done away with the BPA, and they've gone to an advisory committee, and they seem to work well. Any thoughts or input onto that one?
Well, I mean, I think if you go back, was it 24-25, Bryan was nominated as one of the best places in Ohio to live. So I would say that we're doing something different, and maybe our utility plays into that. But I think it's also important to note that if they plan on having that advisory committee, you've admitted that specialized oversight is necessary. So is it that specialized oversight is necessary when the council and mayor are appointing them, or when the people are selecting those individuals? And even in my case, I was appointed. I was selected by 3 members that understood what it took to fill the position.
Yeah, and I would think that their pushback at that point in time was that they would try to do their due diligence the same way, and try to find the Jeremy Sufels out there to sit on the board at that point in time if they had that opportunity too. It seems to me, though, that I'm sorry, Bill, do you have something over here?
Yeah, I wanted to point out that there's actually 87 other municipalities that have elected boards of BPA.
Okay.
And while people keep comparing Bryan to Napoleon, Napoleon has an appointed BPA, no voting rights.
Okay.
They don't generate electricity. Bryan, through the BPA's directions and support to BMU, actually has fossil fuel, solar, and hydro plants that they're managing. And with all of those things, we're also able to save the residents of Bryan, based on the 2025 annual report, about $10.5 million. 8.5 of that was dealing with capacity and transmission savings, because BMU manages peak loads. And people don't understand sometimes when we get the notice that please cut back on your utility usage. It's because we buy power off the grid, but we also generate our own power. And during those peak times, instead of consuming power off the grid at a higher rate, which locks us into that higher rate down the road, we're generating our own electricity. And of course, we're selling power back to the grid when we can. You also need to point out that Napoleon has a city manager in addition to a mayor. So we're not comparing apples and apples.
Yeah. When you say 87, because I didn't do, I'll admitted to them, and I'll admit to you, I didn't do a lot of homework on that, because it wasn't easy homework to do, okay, in all sincerity. I started to check through, and I knew Napoleon, I knew Bowling Green, so I started with them. And then you started to say, well, you'd Google it, right, because we can Google anything nowadays, and Googling is always gets you the correct answer, and it gets it to you right in a heartbeat. But it was hard to get response back. I mean, it was like Google, I had Google stumped on that. So give me some more examples other than those. Do you have the
Sure.
87?
Well, first of all, what happens is if you go through the Secretary of State's website,
Okay.
you can get to each of the Board of Elections. At each of the Board of Elections, you can see the election results for their elected positions.
Okay.
And I literally went through all 88 counties and tracked whether they were a village or a city, whether they had a Board of Public Affairs or a Trustees Board of Public Affairs, what their term was, how many seats were open or available, and how many were vacant. And even on there, you can see what they had through those 87 municipalities. I could find places where there were appointments also. So it's not a unique factor to Bryan that we had to go out and interview 3. And I point to Jeremy's case. He says he was one of 7. So there were 7 other people in the city of Bryan that didn't go through the election process, but they were willing to serve on the BPA board, and of course submitted resumes just like you would as a job application.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because let's go through that right now, because that is one of the big sticking points right now that we have in this town, and it's not just necessarily the BPA. It's the same for council. It's the same for school board. We're having a hard time, guys, getting people to step up and go through that election process right now and say, yeah, I'll run for the BPA. And in most cases right now, they're running unopposed. So it's not even like they have to go through any kind of major campaign against somebody. It's not like Dick and I had to stand up and stump the walk out here somewhere and say, don't vote for Dick, vote for Jim. Okay. How do we take this on? What can we do to make this better, guys?
I think exposure is a big part.
Okay.
Letting people understand what the process involves, what the job entails. And, I mulled it over. Once it was posted, the timing worked for me. I was just resigning as the president of our Biddy Wrestling Club here in town.
Okay.
And, I needed something else to do, right? And,
Sure.
And BMU, I've always been interested in. Like I said, I worked internet help desk back in 2004 for a couple years. And broke my teeth there. But the timing worked for me. It was posted. I looked at it as a job interview. I felt I had qualifications to offer the board, and I went through the interview process, and here I am. But the big thing is that was posted online, and that drew the attention of 7 other people. And sometimes our elected positions aren't necessarily posted that they're vacant, or and the election process can be a very intimidating process as well. I mean, we're seeing it in social media. People are getting throttled right now from the public. And so being a public servant or being a public official can be a very intimidating role to take on.
Yeah, no, it can. And I would agree. The mayor said something about that when she was here the other day about, do you check my social media out? And it's discouraging. I'll say disgusting, because that's where I really wanted to go, to see people, taking shots at people like that. And if I ever do it, then shame on me. And if whoever else does it, it's shame on them, because it is a job. And whether it's the mayor's job, whether it was the communications superintendent's job, whether it was the street department superintendent's job, whoever it might be, Dick, I think you could attest to this. Every now and then we made people mad.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And they would come back and make whatever claim they wanted to make, and you had to have the ability to be able to allow that to roll off and take a good solid look at what their concern was, right?
Right, absolutely. And getting back to your point about getting people to run for city council, for the Board of Public Affairs.
Yeah.
My whole time on the board, I've always encouraged people, please come to the BPA meetings.
Yeah.
I encourage folks, go to your council, but I've sat in on a lot of council meetings. Of course, I was always at the board meetings, and I could never figure out why people just don't want to get engaged in the community. They
Yeah.
just don't. But if you raise their water bill $1 a month,
Yeah.
or $3 a month,
Yeah.
they start squawking and screaming, and unfortunately social media makes it worse.
Yeah.
Come to the board meetings, bring it up. Maybe it's an issue. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it, resolve it, and move on.
Yeah.
But and why folks don't want to run for council? I mean, even the mayor run on a post.
Yeah.
No,
No,
it's 3 times. So
it's going to be an issue. I mean, down the road as
yeah.
we go, unless somebody somehow comes up with that magic pill that says, "Hey, everybody's going to be back involved in this." $300 it's a decent amount of money to get paid per meeting. Some people say, "Oh my gosh, I give $300 to those guys. They're there for a half an hour."
And I was the first one to oppose the raise of $50. And even at $250 a meeting,
Right.
my way of thinking is maybe our board meetings last 15 minutes.
Right.
That's $750 an hour.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody on that board or city council or the mayor or in the city worth that much money.
Sure.
And you shouldn't be doing it for the money.
Right.
You should do it because you care or you want to make change.
Yeah. Bill?
And I think part of that, well, people look at that as a $300 stipend for the meeting. There's probably a lot of activity that goes on outside of those meetings. I know that the BPA board gets a packet, and I'm assuming the council gets a packet. I've attended both meetings for over a year and a half, about 90% of the time, and sat through them. And there's more to than just sitting at that meeting and voting yes or no, and listening to public concerns. So there's I think, a fair amount of time underneath the cover, so to speak, outside the limelight of being on the air.
Yeah, no doubt. And I made the comment to the mayor and to them the other day that I can remember you guys, board members, going home with something that looked like the Bryan phone book at times. Okay, every time for every meeting there was a packet, and depending on what the items were at that time or what we're trying to do or fix or whatever, there was an awful lot of things that were meant to be read at that point in time. So I would agree with you, Bill. There's an awful lot of hours, I think, that are put in by our county commissioners, by our city officials, by a lot of folks that we don't see, or whether they're board members, council members, whoever they might be, because they're a good council member or a good board member, okay, goes home and puts themselves in the middle of that, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think right now it's I would describe it as drinking from the end of a fire hose. It's ingesting a lot of information. Obviously, I'm new, so I'm trying to learn processes, learn technologies that I'm not necessarily familiar with. But I mean, my wife has even commented about how much time I'm putting in behind the scenes, and it can be a challenge. But I think if the public thinks we're just putting in a half hour every 2 weeks for $300 paycheck, I think they're sorely mistaken. And I can speak, I think, for the 5 board members we have now. We're all putting in a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'm in constant communication with Derek, the superintendent, and so we're doing work behind the scenes.
Current BPA member Jeremy Sufel with me right now. I also have my buddy Dick Long sitting in front of me as well, who I've known for quite a few years at this point in time as well. And then on the other side is Bill Metz, as we're talking about the vote no. One of the things that they brought up the other day, guys, past the candidates, past all those things, we've had 5 different directors at the BPA recently in the course of probably the time that since I've left. Maybe it was me. Maybe if I would have been there, all these guys would have stayed. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. More than likely, you'd have gone through 10 by now if I'd have still been there at this point in time. And I know there were different circumstances with a number of these people. And I know the one, and I've been trying to remember his name, and the only name that comes to me, the last name was Byrne. Was that close? Was there a guy named Byrne early on when there was and it doesn't matter, okay? Yeah. But he came in from someplace else in a big city, okay? Came into the job. I thought he was a really nice guy, nice choice. I was selling cable ads at the time, okay? And he kind of talked his way out of the job from what I remember, because he made some people upset around here because we weren't doing the things. We were not going to do things the way we always did them in Bryan anymore. We're going to do them the way the rest of the world does them, and we're going to take this thing and go forward with it. And a lot of folks didn't like that idea that we were going to change things. So I believe he left not because necessarily he couldn't do the job or didn't want to do the job, but after a very short amount of time, just a matter of months, people kind of came to him and said, you know what, you're a big city boy and you're not going to fit in the little city, and you better go. So there's one out of the 5 that I can talk to. Kevin Maynard was another one. I thought Kevin Maynard was going to be just absolutely the perfect fit for that board at this point in time. And even the mayor said, I think if Kevin was here, we'd have been farther down the road at times with that. She said that in the program the other day. So let's talk about those 5 different people that were here and what happened with those, and why have we changed 5 different times in the last 15 years, whatever it's been.
Well, Jim, I was on the board for 2 of them, actually 3 directors that left. Mm-hmm. And, as a board, you got to think about the direction. The director, we support the director.
Sure.
We follow his direction, his lead, we trust, but we pay attention, we observe.
Yep.
And those 2 directors that you were inferring were taking us in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. And as a collaboratively, as a board, we decided that he or she was taking this in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. And we tried to sit down and reason, and it, they were pretty adamant about moving forward. And it just sometimes you got to pull the plug and say, "Whoa, let's go to something different that fits our style."
As Mary Burns used to tell me all the time, I'm the guy that hired you, so I can be the guy that fires you.
Correct.
real quickly. It's can happen today
Yes.
if it needs to. To which I was always answering, well, okay, I was looking for a job when I found this one, you know.
And at the end of the day, that director, and they know and understand, they serve at the pleasure of the board.
Yes, they do.
And so they have to follow the board.
Yes.
The board gives them advice, and they don't want to take it, then sometimes you have to make a change
Right.
and move on.
Yeah. And that is the difficult part of being on the board.
It is.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But and I would think, in my history with the board, I would have to say that that is not an easy decision for them. Okay,
Very hard.
very slow to make that change from everything. If I were going to accuse them of doing something, a lot of times when I was around it was how long it took them to make that decision,
Right.
or how long it took them to decide and think that thing through
It does.
before they made that decision at that point in time. And I always thought that maybe they should work a little faster at times with some of the things that were happening.
Sure.
But again, that was being an employee and not a person on the board.
Right.
And that's part of why we need really 5 solid board people, at least.
Absolutely.
5, but it potentially you get 5. I don't know if they ever get 5 that are really sold into bought in the program 100%, like you'd like for them to be. But you need more that are bought in than not to make something like that happen. Okay, so there's your board of directors, and right now you're happy with the guy that you got.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Derek Schultz,
Okay,
outstanding director. Very smart. I watched him grow from the different departments
yes,
to his, being the utility director. Fantastic. He's so involved, AMP Ohio, OMEA, and he's right on top of things. He works hard. And I will, if I can give a plug to BMU, what a fantastic group of people. Smart. I'll infer when we were without a director, I was the board chair one time. Jim
Yeah.
Salisbury was the board chair.
okay,
We had to step up and kind of take over and run the show. These people were incredible.
Yeah.
They surrounded me and gave me information. I had resources at AMP that could help me get through. Power supply costs were a little out of whack. And I had to figure out how to get that fixed. And we got it done. But and if I may add,
Yeah.
the mayor kind of referenced without a director, the board chair had stepped up and didn't seem to really know what he was doing. I took that as being directed at me.
okay,
That's a falsehood. I had a handle on it. I stepped up, dove right in, and we got it done.
yeah.
We kept moving.
She also, I think, insinuated that you weren't easy to leave when that you almost wanted the job, wanted to keep the job. Is there any
Yes.
truth to that at all?
Oh, yes. That was fun stepping up. It was a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
a lot of pressure. But like I said, if I would have never had the support that I had behind me, I could have never done it.
Right.
But that team at BMU, they did everything they could possibly do to help me, and then I took a liking to it. but I was retired, Jim, and I did not want a full-time job.
Okay. So we're not totally. You really weren't lobbying for the job necessarily in the background.
No. I just wanted to keep that utility moving forward, just like they always have been.
Yeah, and Bill, I want to go to a point that you made off mic here a little while ago. That is the way that this succession pattern works for both the utility and the city, right? I mean, you don't just grab somebody off the street and put them in this job. There's a process for both.
Correct. And just like the utility director, if there would be a vacant seat, so to speak, the BPA chair will step up as Dick Long did in that period of time and draw from the resources he knows. The same thing happens in the mayor's position. If the mayor, for some reason, would become incapacitated or no longer available, the council president's going to step up. So it's not really any different between the two different organizational bodies.
Well, and that's so basically what happened was supposed to happen It was a good situation for the intern period, and the next thing you know, we hired a new director, and Dick got to be retired again, which is a good thing. All right, let's talk about a couple of other things, because again, they all agreed, and I agree. I don't think we, at this point in time, want to do away with the utility. We don't want to sell it to Toledo Edison or anybody else, right?
No, the utility's a gem in this community. Our low rates, our water rates. I mean, we're sitting in a good spot with that utility. We definitely don't want to lose that. I mean, I think you can go up the road and talk to a customer from Toledo Edison, and they'll tell you how they feel about it. And,
Yeah.
we can do some comparisons with a lot of other municipalities in the area, and I think that our citizens would be very happy to keep that in-house.
Yeah, I think so too. And I made the comment the other day. I'm from Troy, Ohio. Troy sold their utility to Dayton Power and Light years ago, and I don't know when. I've not been around Troy for years, but I know that used to be conversation at the coffee shop every now and then. Boy, I wish we wouldn't have done that.
Right.
I wish we still had that. Okay.
You never, ever want to sell your assets.
No,
You
not,
know, and the remarkable thing about the city of Bryan, and it's, I wear it as a badge of honor, we are an incredible city for 8,200 people. Mm-hmm. We have our own generation, 3 gas generators and a Nordberg diesel. We own our own power dam. We have our own solar field. That's amazing. We're one of the very few cities left with our own generation.
yeah.
And that is an asset because we can generate on those peak demand times, bring our footprint down, our base load down, and it keeps our costs down so that doesn't get passed on to the ratepayers.
Yeah.
And we're incredibly blessed to have that. And getting back to something, if I may add, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how is the 5 council members going to maintain the city of Bryan and control over BMU and be able to do what these 5 board members do. To me, it's impossible. I can see it going backwards, and boy, we don't want that.
Yeah. Bill?
And I think what people don't realize is BMU or BPA, the Board of Public Affairs, is behind the scenes like a CE or like a board to a corporation. Mm-hmm. They're doing the future planning 5 years plus down the road. They're looking at the assets of the utilities. Most recently, there's one of the local substations that the transformers are getting at peak usage. They're old, they need to replace. The lead time on them was 3 to 4 years. So they're looking at, okay, we not only need to replace them because they're old, but we also need to replace them because now we're seeing we could get more capacity with new replacement equipment. We also need to remember BPA gives BMU and Derek as the director direction and says, hey, this is the way we need to operate. This is, what's going on. And then they're also there making sure the financial support's there, looking at what we're charging the ratepayers as a municipality. I want to point out, everybody says, BMU just takes the money and run. Based on the 2024 published BMU annual report, they gave back to the city of Bryan $1.4+ million. You can break it down from electric, water, communications, and take it out of it, but there's also labor and materials in there. Mm-hmm. BMU supplies every city building in the city of Bryan with electric, water, and communications. BMU takes in our local city schools, realize about $20,000 a year in some free electricity and communication support. Mm-hmm. Those are monies that our school systems aren't going to have to go to the ratepayers or the taxpayers to get funds to support. Yeah. So BMU is not a just I'll take it. That's the difference between BPA/BMU and Bryan City Council. BMU is totally self-sufficient. All of their operation costs are based on the rates that they're charging individuals. And I can tell you, I did live in other utilities and nowhere close to what BMU is charging. Mm-hmm. And the city of Bryan operates on taxes. So there are 2 different funding sources, and they're 2 different enterprise versus, municipality.
Yeah. They came up with a number that was about a third of that number, Bill. Do we have any feel for the difference between the 1.4 that was on the basically in any kind of budgetary document that was handed out. I think, and I remember the time back in the day where Casey would come around and say, how much free service did you give away this year? And I had to come up with that number. So basically, that is a number that you show on any kind of annual report or
Yep.
whatever at 1.4 million.
I actually have the BMU utility reports. They're out online on the bmu.net web. You can search them. If the number that was thrown out, I heard was 800,000, then I heard 400,000. Now, keep in mind that 1.4 is not only services, but labor and materials.
Sure.
If you look at the city buildings just for services in 2024, it was about $500,000. Over the last 5 years, it was 2.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the numbers can lie, or liars can make numbers do
Sure.
what they want to be, but these are published documents by BMU.
Okay. All right. So, and again, I always knew that we inflated them a little bit. Okay. I will tell you that. So there's a hedge factor maybe in that as far as you're getting the retail cost or whatever it might be. But you're not going to go from $1.4 million to 500,000. With just the inflation that you might put into something like that. Because I can remember back in the day that the mayor used to always get billed for HBO and Cinemax and everything else because we couldn't shut it off. Okay, it was there. So it was a legitimate charge, and we had a legitimate charge from those networks that we had to pay because we had to claim him, okay, or whoever it might be, all right? So there are things like that do go on. But I know the free service has been tremendous. Let's go to a pushback that I gave to them the other day because I still think that is the case. BMU, oftentimes when we sit into meetings, at least back in my day, which is 15 years ago nowadays, there was always a way of trying to say, well, BMU's got a lot of money, so let's try to figure out how to work them into the equation somehow, okay? And I used as an example that day the streetlights downtown, back when we changed from the old streetlights to the beautiful streetlights that we have right now, and BMU paid for the streetlights and they put them in and they did everything else under the auspices that, oh, by the way, now the free service you're giving us for those streetlights is just going to come down because those are now new bulbs and we're not going to use as much electricity. Okay, so BMU ought to be responsible for putting all those things up because it will be a net savings to BMU. And I know that happens on a regular basis, and I know that it's tried, okay, on a regular basis. And there are ways that you can maybe fit it into the legal side of things, and then there's ways that we just kind of fit it into the whole project as well. That still happen now with BMU, or are you aware of any of those kind of things that happen now? Because I can only attest to what I did 15 years ago, or was it meetings I was into 15 years ago?
The only thing I can think of, Jim, is the only issues that we ever had was we went to all LED lights.
Yeah.
To lower that.
Yeah. So But I never understood why the city, I never, because I will argue with you guys or with them, I live outside of town, okay? I'm a ratepayer, all right? I don't know why I'm giving free electricity to the city of Bryan, okay, or the city schools or anybody else. If I want to be a grumpy old man, give me a break. Give me some sort of a kickback, okay? Because I live outside of town. I'm a ratepayer only, so why don't I get a little bit of a break for giving the mayor and everybody else or whoever in the city has free service at this point in time, Bill?
In rebuttal to that,
Yeah.
I would say, well, you drive on the city streets in the nighttime, so you're using the city lights.
Yes.
Something I didn't break down, if you look at the BMU unbilled services report, there's multiple line items. I just picked out the city buildings, but there's traffic signals that are powered electrically.
Yes.
There's security lighting, throughout the city of Bryan. There's the pools and the rec department that you may use, you may not.
Yeah.
There's the Jubilee and Christmas lights that are lit. You obviously probably see those.
I do.
We have a donation from the Bard Foundation for the fountain on the square, being the Fountain City. BMU provides water and electricity to that at no charge, and other people do the maintenance and things on it. And with any electric device, they eventually become obsolete or wear out. So the replacement of the city streetlights, going from the old, I'll call them halogen for lack of anything else, to the new LEDs, while it reduced the operating cost, there was investments on the 2024 report. I just happened to glance at it while we were talking here. There was $26,000 in streetlight installation and maintenance. So BMU is actually maintaining those, and you, as not being a resident of Bryan but paying in the utilities, are benefiting from them slightly.
Yeah, I know, and that's always when the grumpy old Jim, steps back and says, "Okay, I guess so," But again, I think you can see the point. I mean, you do have 10%. I'm guessing, remembering roughly 10% of the folks, the customers, electric customers, sitting outside of the city limits.
Right.
Maybe that's larger or smaller nowadays, but it was somewhere in that ballpark of people who really, you can't sit on the board. You can't run for the board. I can't vote for this. If I want to vote yes or no on this issue right now, I can't vote for it. Okay. But the day after the election, whatever happens, if you decided to jack my electric rates up, okay, all I can do is go down and growl and grumble at the board meeting like anybody else,
And that's always been unfair
Yeah.
to folks like you that live outside the city limits,
Sure.
because we are a public power.
Yeah.
The ratepayers are the shareholders.
Yes.
This is your utility. And they don't have voting rights and
Yes.
things. That's been unfair, and it's unfortunate.
And it's a state thing. It's not the
Sure.
the city is
Law,
not.
right. We don't have control
It's
of
no
it,
control
yeah.
from the BPA or the city council, either one. But it doesn't make grumpy old Jim not less
Oh, no.
grumpy. You know what I mean? Every now and then when he gets into that situation.
Sure.
But again, and I would like to see if somehow, and I don't know because you can't annex these places in because they got to be contiguous to the city limits and all that kind of stuff. And Lakeland Woods is 4.5 miles outside of town, so we're never going to get to that point. But I would hope that we could lobby our state representatives to maybe think that thing through a little bit more when it comes to, part of the problem we have is not having board members. Well, if you could add another, 500-600 homes to this footprint and allow people in those homes maybe to run, maybe they would. Okay,
Absolutely.
maybe they wouldn't. I don't know, but you would have that opportunity. And I would think it's only fair to be able to vote yes or no, and especially in a situation like this. Okay, guys. So let's talk a little bit about what happens if indeed this thing does get voted down on May the 5th. If they vote yes, okay, because that's the way that it would be voted. If you decide that you want to get rid of the BPA, and overwhelmingly, as I said to the mayor the other day, the yes vote goes through, and the day after the election, now we no longer have a BPA. Am I correct with that thinking, or is there a time frame that happens there, or are we just absolutely on the new ground and maybe catastrophe waiting around the corner?
Yeah, so I think from my understanding is there's got to be a 30-day period when you enact a charter ordinance. I think that's a state law. But as far as the plan, has anybody, I don't know that I've heard what the plan is. And I didn't feel that was adequately answered the other day when they were in as well. So that's the part that scares me is this is a $25 million operation that supports over 8,000 homes. We better have a plan in place if the citizens go that direction.
Yeah.
And for me, my hands are tied. I'm a board member that's been voted out. So I hope that if that goes through, the city knows what they want to do.
Yeah. Now, there was a conversation the other day that we had, and I found it to be a little bit unbelievable. I guess maybe believable because I'm not there, okay? But the comment was made that the BPA actually told some of the city employees, because let's go back just a notch, because one of the benefits that the people who are voting yes, they say that if we take this all in, then we get to bring all of the department heads in for a meeting with the city heads. And now if we bring General Electric in tomorrow and they want to build a plant, okay, GE doesn't have to go to the BPA and go to the water department and the wastewater department and the communication department and every place else, because we're going to bring them all in and have one big old meeting with that new potential business coming to town. And I remembered during my days having some folks come in like that, and that was automatic. I mean, everybody got together because here comes General Electric in. We don't want to lose this thing, so we're all in the room and we all got our suits and ties on and we're all looking our best and got our best salesman hat on and we're all meeting together. But their claim was that we had times where people wanted to do things, businesses wanted to do things, and the BPA said, no, man, you're the water department, the electric department, you don't get to be in that meeting right now. We'll have our own meeting. Are you aware of any of those things happening where the BPA didn't play nice with the council when a new business might be coming to town?
Never. I have never seen that, Jim.
Yeah.
Never.
And
They have always included everyone. for their input.
Yeah.
I have never seen it done the way you just described. Never.
Yeah.
And as an active sitting board member, if I heard that, there would be repercussions because we're team players. It's not BMU versus the city of Bryan here. We're here to serve the public. And if we're not working together, it's not hard to pick up the phone and call the city engineer and say, hey, this is the electric we can offer, or this is the electric. But the other side of that is a new business coming in the town. They know what their electrical demands are. They know what their water demands are. And I would hope that they know that they need to make sure that we can supply that. Like, that's not foreign process to anybody. And I fail to see how we're the holdup in that process. We just need to pick up the phone and talk to each other. If we need to be present in a meeting, there's no reason that the city engineer can't sit with the director of utility or can't sit with the director of communications or any of that. It's not, we're team players here. We're here to serve the public.
Yeah. And that's, I know the utility and the BPA and the council forever and ever and ever have had their differences, and they've had the times when they would battle and they would fight and they would cuss one another and everything else. But I never ever thought that either side would ever stay in the way of the other side trying to make something happen that would be good for the city of Bryan.
We still have a common goal.
Yeah.
Regardless of our differences, we still owe it to the public to do our jobs.
Yeah, no doubt about that, and that's good to know, because I was just having a hard time, and that's when I made the comment to the mayor the other day that that to me that becomes a management situation.
Yes.
And that's a management situation that goes to Derek and it goes to Carrie, okay? Yeah. And if these two aren't working, if my departments aren't working well together, then I need to pick up the phone and I need to call Carrie or Derek, whoever that might be, and we need to sit down and say, hey, this isn't working real well. And I would have to believe that's the way it would work. I think Carrie and Derek get along just fine.
Oh, absolutely.
They work well together.
The mayor sits in our meetings, every meeting, and so I've been here 4 months, and I've never heard of any of these issues that were brought to the forefront. I've talked to many other individuals, and they were completely unaware. This is kind of a blindsided statement, and so if BPA's got to step up and take the lead and kick down those walls and make things work, then we'll do it. But our job is to serve the public.
Yeah, yeah. Bill?
I want to point out that, the BPA turned around in a number of years ago. The city of Bryan wanted to bring more industry in. And one of the things was, where do we put them?
Yeah.
Well, the city didn't have enough financial resources to make that happen. So through the direction of BPA, the North Industrial Park surfaced, and BMU stepped up and put in the infrastructures to host new industrials. And at this point, there's been not a lot of activity. We obviously have a new manufacturing facility going in, but there's still a lot of acreage. Yes. And there's still some acreage left on the South Industrial Park.
Yeah, there really is. And it you know what? As much as grumpy old Jim doesn't like for the two of them to work together and give free services and things like that, if you're going to bring in another Docks or whoever that might be, and I know nothing about Docks, whatsoever, pretty building, and they popped up and seem to be doing well, and that's good because we need all the jobs we can get around here.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing, but I cannot imagine the two organizations not being able to come together and figure things out and just tell the grumpy old Jim, don't worry about it. We're gonna make this happen. Your day's behind you, and that's a good way to be. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the city funds and the utility funds and keeping them separate, because I do believe that is an issue that is always. It's always been walked the fine line. There's always been an edge there, okay? And you can't blame them because, Bill, you pointed out a little while ago, and we all go through these times. I mean, the city was having a few problems with their finances, okay? They weren't bringing in the revenue they needed, and they needed to do some other things. So we cooperate, we make things happen. But there are defined rules and ways of doing this and ways of not doing this. And I would hope, Jeremy, that the BPA watches for stuff like that. And at least, I know you can't be there every day to be part of those conversations, but it's something that you ought to be aware of at least.
Yeah, so part of our packet that we get every week before our meeting is a list of every PO that went out. And we scour those, and then as we're sitting before the meeting, that book comes across our desk, and we can actually go in and look at every individual invoice that came through in that time period. and we sign off on it. And I can tell you myself personally, I go through and I look for things that fall under my expertise, and I go through them with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we're doing things that we need to be doing, and especially as it pertains to the IT side. I live in that environment. I recognize that we have an IT department. Actually, the city's IT reports to BMU IT communications.
Okay.
So we're working together. And so that's something that we take, I think, pride in, is making sure we're fully aware of what's going on and where the funds are going. And, if we look through and we see something we don't like, we can question it.
Yeah.
And that has happened, and just in the 4 months that I've been on board.
Sure.
So.
Jeremy, you'd be the perfect person to ask right now. If indeed this went on to council, and if indeed the 6th day of May comes and we have voted yes to do away with the BPA, the council member, and I know the mayor said that Mr. Betts goes to most of the BPA meetings and follows what's going on and is on top of a lot of this kind of stuff. But for him and the other 4 council members, how much of a learning curve would it be for them to be able to really get up to speed and be a board member at BPA or oversee BPA, that what BPA was overseeing before?
It's going to take a lot, and that's the advantage I have, is I get to focus solely on BMU. I don't have to learn BMU while trying to run the rest of the city. And I think Deborah would say the same thing, and Bryan, he was elected as well. I mean, we're all learning BMU and solely BMU. We're not having to pay attention to what wastewater's doing. We're not having to pay attention to, anything other than that. And so we get to live in our own home. But it's a steep learning curve. And I'm in technology. I understand electric. I understand water, but it's a different ball game.
Yeah.
And it's a 25 to 20. I think our budget this year is $28 million. Is a revenue generating operation, not a tax funded operation. They're different.
Yeah, they are. And I know the mayor pointed out, and she is right, a lot of that number is the power that you have to buy. There's a big power bill that you got to bring in all the time. But it's still a $25+ million business that you're going to somehow try to meld in with the council at that point. And not that it can't be done, because it has been done in different places. There's no doubt about that. Okay, but it would not happen overnight.
No, and if the citizens vote that way, it has to happen. There's no choice.
Yeah.
So they will have to figure it out very quickly.
Yeah, it is amazing. I think the last thing that I've got on my list that you brought up the other day that I want to cover with you guys were permitting issues that they brought up. That red tape right now and permitting was a big problem when it came to businesses or getting business done in the city of Bryan, because somebody had to go several different places to get several different permits, and it would be nice to be able to go to one location and one shop stop.
Yeah, so I've asked about this, and nobody's been able to give me a legitimate case where this happened. And then based on my research, permits go to the city engineer.
Okay.
We don't handle permits at all. Actually, I've been on the board 4 months, and we've not handled a single permit. We've not had any discussions about this. The only permit that I'm aware of that we handle is a permit to hook up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So any involvement on BMU would be interfacing with the city engineer on their permit process. So I don't understand how the BPA is standing in the way of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a moot argument, because in my way of thinking,
Yeah.
if we had some issues with permitting, or like some of these yes folks are saying, why didn't council come to BPA and say, hey, look, we got this permitting problem,
Yeah.
and work together and try to figure it out, for the betterment of everyone, instead of the nuclear option and let's just get rid of the BPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to drive a finishing nail with a jackhammer.
Yeah.
You're removing an entire oversight layer of government to speed the process. And when you talk about removing red tape and strengthening accountability, I don't know how you take a team of 11 individuals, because you got the mayor, the 5 council members, the 5 BPA members. I don't understand how you remove 5 of those and strengthen accountability. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times, I've worked in government for 22 years. Red tape is accountability. There's red tape in place for a purpose. And we see when you start peeling that back and government moves faster, you see mistakes happen. You see things slid under a rug or things that miss. And they referenced like a 7-week delay in a contract recently. And from my understanding on my research on that, it was because the signature line was directed at Derek, and Derek is not representing of the owner of the system.
Okay.
And so we see this on the county side. The president of the Board of Commissioners has the sign as owner of most county contracts. That's part of the process. And it's the same way with the mayor. The mayor is the top elected official in the city, and she signs off as mayor. And that was a paperwork problem. That wasn't a BPA problem. It wasn't going to be solved by removing BPA. That's just filing paperwork. And we can talk about, yes, there's 2 weeks between our meetings, and we fall after them. So if we approve something, it takes 2 weeks and it goes to them. We can have conversations about moving dates and moving meeting times and coming together. But there's none of that's been taken place. We've not had those conversations. And I think that you would at least try to have those conversations before you try to eliminate a 120-year-old proven process. So.
Yeah. It is amazing. Okay, guys, we've gone 57 minutes right now. How's that? Okay, without taking a break, and I wanted to go exactly that way as well. So for the last several minutes that we have together right now, any comments? Anything that we've missed right now? Anything that you guys would like to wrap up with here right now?
I'd like to make a statement, Jim. Over this whole issue, all it's done is pitted people against each other. It's been non-productive for our community. I think it's going to cause, and it already has caused, hard feelings. When you got the BPA or BMU, it runs like a Singer sewing machine. And I coined the phrase last time they tried to do away with the board.
Mm-hmm.
If something's not broke, why in the hell do you want to try to fix something that's not broke?
Right.
So at the end of the day, council has always been less than warm to the BPA, but my 12 years on the board, I've always tried to get along with city council. It's tough at times, but you got to keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, this is about our community and the city of Bryan. I think a vote yes would hurt the community. So I encourage everyone to vote no. And let's get this over with and move on. I'm sure that snake will rear its ugly head again because I've had to deal with it twice.
Sure.
And we'll just move on and try to make things better for the city and hopefully can patch the hard feelings between city council, the mayor, and the Board of Public Affairs.
Yeah. Bill, any last comments at all, Bill Metz?
I urge the public to go out and vote, whichever way you do vote. I will hang my hat on a statement that I was asked at BPA how I feel about it. I'm going to trust, based on the social circles I'm in, that the people are going to make the right decision.
Jeremy Sufel?
Yeah, so I think I said my piece. I appreciate you bringing us in here and giving us a voice. I think it's important for the city to hear both sides of things. I know I'm going to keep doing my job until I can't, and that's serving the public, and that's a team serving the public. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Jim.
Last thing that I'm going to close with before we end the hour, Mary Leatherman the other day, who was a member of council, lost her mom.
Yes,
And whenever we get into this,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, whenever you get into a situation where we fight back and forth with one another, there does have to come a time where we all can agree with this, and our hearts go out to Mary right now and her family.
Absolutely.
No doubt about that.
Prayers.
Looks like she lived a great life, 86 years young, and I don't think I'm ever going to make it to that side, even though I look like I'm 86 right now. Okay, but I think that's the one thing, and I do appreciate your three being here today as well and saying the same thing that I say. We're all on the same team. I don't care where this goes, how this goes, whatever happens, go make your best decision. Listen to what we just had to say in this hour, what we had to say in the hour with the folks who want you to vote yes. make your decision. Let's get it behind us, whatever way it goes. And then let's not forget we all live in or around the city of Bryan, and we're all trying to push for the same thing. And I will continue to pay my money bill to keep the doggone Christmas lights on and the water in the fountain. How's
I
that? huh?
appreciate that.
You're still part of the community.
I am part of the community. Thank you to Dick Long, to Bill Metz, and to Jeremy Sufel today. Vote no on issue number 7. May the 5th is your date, and we will take both of these recordings, put them up on our social media tomorrow so nobody gets an advantage. Again, the radio station is taking absolutely no stance in this as far as whether you should vote yes, whether you should vote no. Our stance is you ought to listen to the conversations we've had, and you do what feels right for you. With that, it is high noon on the Q 96.5 FM.